Hey there, ghost in the crowd. Yeah, I see you. The one who doesn't beg for attention, but keeps ending up in the spotlight anyway. You ain't loud, you ain't flashy, but there's something about you that makes people freeze mid-sentence when you enter the room. Ever notice how they stare just a little too long? How they talk quieter when you're around? Not because you asked them to, but because your silence swallows theirs. You didn't sign up for this magnetism. You never asked to be the blueprint that makes others question their own reflection. But here you are, minding your business and still being the center of theirs. You're the contradiction they can't process. You're not trying to impress anybody, and yet they're obsessed with figuring you out. You're not even playing the game, and somehow you keep winning. You don't even speak, but your energy screams. Not the kind of scream that begs to be heard. No. Yours is the quiet pressure that builds in people's lungs when they're around you too long. Like standing next to a ticking clock they can't hear, but somehow still feel. You know exactly what I mean. You've seen the way they act confused by your calm, like they expect you to explain yourself, as if silence needs justification. They want to categorize you, tag you, own you. But you don't come with a label. You're not a product. You're a presence. And that's what rattles them, isn't it? Because they're used to people performing for approval, begging for clicks, likes, claps, crumbs. But you don't chase anything. You pull, and that's where it begins to eat at them. Because they're addicted to attention and allergic to authenticity. They're calibrated for noise. You operate in frequencies they don't even understand. That's why they watch you. Because even in your stillness, you move the air around you. Even in your absence, you haunt rooms. And the wild part is, they don't even know you. They don't know what keeps you up at 3 a.m. staring into the dark. They don't know what memories echo when everyone's gone. They don't know what kind of fire burns behind your eyes. But they know enough to fear it. They feel it. They sense the weight behind your silence. You walk like you've been through hell, but don't need to tell anybody about it. You look at people like you already know what they hide behind their smile. You laugh like you've tasted pain and made peace with it. And that's what unhinges them. Because you don't need validation. You don't need a crowd. You don't need a damn thing they offer. And that makes you the most dangerous person in the room. Not because you're cruel, not because you're loud, but because you're free. You don't wear your story like a badge. You wear it like armor. Your silence isn't emptiness. It's discipline. It's memory. It's knowing. And deep down, they know you see through their rehearsed smiles, their borrowed personalities, their shaky confidence that collapses when they're not being watched. You're not fooled. You never were. You sit alone, not because you're unloved, but because you know the difference between company and parasites. You walk alone, not because no one invited you, but because most places aren't worthy of your presence. You speak less, not because you're shy, but because you know most people don't even listen to understand. You're not cold. You're focused. You're not distant. You're protecting your peace. And while they run in circles trying to stay relevant, you become unforgettable by simply existing. They try to shrink you into something digestible, a label, a rumor, a type. But you're too big for that, too deep, too real. They don't really hate you. They hate what you expose in them. When you walk in, they feel their own masks slipping. When you lock eyes with them, they feel seen in ways that make them squirm. And when you disappear without explanation, They feel the silence louder than any word you ever spoke. They try to study you like you're a puzzle with missing pieces, but they never stop to ask if you removed those pieces on purpose. See, that's the part that drives them crazy. You're not broken, you're private, you're not mysterious, you're undecodable. And that sends the insecure ones spiraling, because your type doesn't come with an instruction manual. You're not broadcasting your every thought for the world to consume. You're not oversharing for applause. You don't post pain for pity points. You bleed in silence, then show up looking 10 times stronger. They're addicted to spectacle. But you're the storm they didn't see coming, because you don't make thunder. You make impact. They try to copy your look, your tone, your walk, your whole energy. But they can't duplicate what was forged in solitude. You didn't get this way from comfort. You got this way from screaming into pillows and walking through fire with your teeth clenched. You got this way from betrayal, abandonment, sleepless nights, and unanswered questions. You were made in the shadows, and that's why the light doesn't scare you. You're the type who can read a room in seconds. You know who's real, who's pretending, and who's falling apart behind that fake laugh. You speak when it matters. You disappear when it doesn't. You show up with silence sharper than most people's rage. And they hate that they can't figure out what you're thinking, because you don't need to raise your voice to command respect. You don't need to move fast to leave people behind. You don't need to flex anything. Your existence is the flex. You walk in, and people notice. Not because you're trying, because you carry something they can't buy, fake, or replicate. Depth. And they feel it. Even if they can't name it. Even if they don't know why you unsettle them. Even if they can't explain why they keep thinking about you long after you're gone. You could say one word, and it would echo louder than their entire life story. But you don't need to. Because when you look at someone, they feel like their soul is under inspection. You don't expose them with insults. You expose them with presence. They say you're too quiet. What they really mean is, I can't control you. They say you're intense. What they mean is, you make me feel things I'm not ready to face. They say you're cold. What they mean is, you stopped giving me access to your warmth. You make them uncomfortable, not because you're dangerous, but because you're free from the need to be liked. You stopped shrinking. You stopped explaining. You stopped waiting for permission to exist. And when someone stops needing permission, when someone stops asking to be seen, when someone starts existing on their own terms, they become unforgettable. You became that. Not by shouting, not by begging, not by performing, by being. And that's a language most people never learn. It's the language of energy, the one that can't be posted or polished, the one that doesn't need an audience, the one that radiates from a soul that's been through it and came out glowing in the dark. You don't announce yourself. You don't introduce your story. You let your silence shake the walls. You let your vibe whisper the truth. You let your eyes say what words never could, and they hear you. They all do. Even the ones pretending not to look. Even the ones stealing pieces of you to build themselves. Even the ones who talk behind your back because your face tells too much truth. You've become a mirror. And mirrors are brutal to the ones who hide. You want to know why they obsess? Because you remind them of what they buried. You represent the parts of themselves they abandoned to fit in. You walk like you're at peace with your demons. They walk like their smile might crack if they stop faking for 1 second. You've been labeled too much by people who couldn't even carry a fraction of your silence. You've been misunderstood by crowds too shallow to understand still water runs deep. You've been left out by the same people who couldn't handle being alone with their own thoughts. But you feast in solitude. You get stronger in the silence. You build in the shadows. You don't just survive the darkness, you study in it. And that makes you dangerous in ways they can't put into words. That's why they flinch when you speak truth without a tremble. That's why they flinch when you stay calm while they unravel. That's why they flinch when your eyes don't blink while they're performing their perfect little lie. You don't need the crowd needs you. And somewhere, they know it.